Welcome to another edition of Straight Shooting Sports Talk. And I'm your host, Dujane Bland. Got a lot to talk about. The NBA's wrapping up their season, getting ready to head into playoff action. We've got NFL OTAs for some teams. Draft is coming up. Talk a little bit about that. And as always, with our new segment, My Final Shot, that will be interesting as well. Let's get right into it. We are live. So if you're listening to us live, thank you very much. You are able to get at us via Twitter at NotBland21. You can talk to me there. Or if you don't do the Twitter thing, you can hit us up at straightshootingst@gmail.com. That's straightshootingst@gmail.com. So let's get right into it, guys. We'll start right off with
the NBA.
That's right. Last games of the NBA season. And as we look at the standings here, the Western Conference from top to bottom, everybody's locked. Everybody's in. All 8 teams are in. You're going to have Golden State at the number 1, San Antonio 2, Houston 3, LA Clippers 4, Utah 5, Oklahoma City at 6, Memphis at 7, Portland at 8. Now, where it's interesting is the Eastern Conference. That's going to be where the interest is going to lie. And here's why. Indiana and Chicago, as of now, are your 7th and 8th seeds. Now, with tonight's games, we have Washington versus Miami. Washington, obviously, is already in at the 4th seed. And we have the Chicago Bulls against the Brooklyn Nets, who are going to be sitting a total of 6 players. Now, the scenario for the Bulls is pretty simple. Got to beat the Brooklyn Nets, and this team will be shorthanded with 6 players. Or if you lose to the Nets, you risk missing the playoffs. It's that simple. That simple for them to be able to get in. Now, the scenario for the Miami Heat to be able to get in is that they're going to need a win over the Wizards, who are already in the playoffs. It's really not known of how many minutes most of the starters will play. So that's up in the air. And they're going to need to be able to win. They're going to either need a Bulls loss or a Pacers loss. So if Indiana loses and Chicago wins, Miami is still in. But if they win and Chicago wins, they're out. It's that simple. So Miami has wouldn't say a rock's throw, because it's a pretty doable scenario here for the Miami Heat to be able to get in. So if you're going to watch any games tonight, those are going to be the games to watch. Indiana's taking on Atlanta in Atlanta. And Atlanta's the 5th seed. Not really sure exactly how they're coming into the game either. They don't have anything to play for, obviously. So it's going to be interesting how these coaches decide to divvy up the minutes, what they decide to do with their starters. And that's going to play a huge part. That's going to play a huge part. And, unlike the NFL, and okay, at times there are teams that have number 1 seeds and they have the tendency to rest. I think we even have a scenario we can talk about: the Washington Redskins and Giants last year. Giants didn't really rest anyone until the second half, and pretty much the game was in hand. They had control over that game. And we have tendencies of teams resting players, but these are lower seed teams, but they're locked in. Indiana, on the other hand, needs this win. Again, Atlanta being in, so it'll be interesting what combinations and what teams decide to do in reference to their players, especially the teams that they're playing who are already in. That's going to play a huge factor in whether Chicago, Miami, Indiana, which one of these teams are going to be the final locks for the playoffs. But it should be a good one. I know there's a lot of talk of Cleveland not really going after the number 1 seed, conceding that in a couple of losses. They were 4-6 in their last 10 games. They ended with a 3-game losing streak. Look, this is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Are they the team last year that won the championship? I don't think so. I'm not 100% sold that they're the perennial team that they were. But anytime you have LeBron James, you have Kyrie Irving out there on the floor, it's going to be interesting to see how they match up with some of the later rounds. I think we mentioned Boston. Boston was on a pretty good run. They finished the season with a 2-game winning streak. They were 7-3 in their last 10 games. Again, we talked about this all season long. It's about being able to get wins on the road. They were 23-18 on the road as a road team. You look at some of the other teams, Washington, they finished 6-4 in their last 10, and they're playing tonight. So we'll see how that goes. Does that really factor in, being that they're already in the last game? If they lose, really doesn't matter to them. But they are 19-21 on the road, and when you have a losing record on the road, that makes a huge difference, especially in the playoffs. This is something that the Washington Wizards have struggled with, and that's being able to put together and steal a few games, especially maybe that first away game, especially when we don't have home court advantage. Being able to win on the road is very important, and that's something that they struggled with in previous seasons in making the playoffs, and is a little bit of a reason why they have the tendency to have the early exit. Cleveland is 500, almost 500 on the road, and that's a little bit skewed, especially with the injuries the team had. I know a lot of people expect, as myself, LeBron's the man. I understand he can't do it all, but I know they've had injuries, but they should be able to get some things done. I think the only question I have with Cleveland is the amount of minutes that LeBron has played, among others. Will that factor in late in the series, in these series of playoff games, and will that have an effect on them and take a toll on them? Kind of like the Golden State thing, where they kind of went after the record, and then later in the playoffs, they just didn't have enough gas in the tank left to really close the deal. That's going to be very important for teams coming down the stretch, but it's going to be a great playoffs. We have some great teams in here, and there's going to be some teams that have gotten hot at the right time. I personally think in the Eastern Conference, it's Boston, Cleveland, Toronto, Washington. It's a toss-up from 5 to 8. I really don't see those guys doing much of damage. And when you come into the Western Conference, you have to give the nod to Golden State. San Antonio, they're always that team that gets counted out. Nobody's really looking at them, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're there, and they're jumping in there and they're punching guys right in the throat. Houston, it's another team. I think it's a little bit underestimated as well. Clippers are the Clippers. We'll see what they can do. And I think the sleeper team, which I really don't think that they'll get too far, and that's no fault of who I think the MVP is in Russell, but Oklahoma City. I think they really can be disruptive in a 7-game series. they may be a little bit tough, but that team, they can run with the best. They can run with the best of them. Which brings me to my next discussion of the MVP race. We have Harden, and some people still think this is a two-man race, and I'm going to tell you that it's over. Russell Westbrook, you can diminish all the and demean all the triple doubles that he got, and you can come up with any kind of excuse to say how he got those. The fact of the matter is, I don't see too many players in this league doing that. Not at a record, not at a record pace. And you can say, okay, you went for the record. So wouldn't you, if you had an opportunity to break a record? And they still won the game. Guys hit several clutch last-minute shots to win ball games for his team. He's put this team on his back. I know a lot of people say and that Houston doesn't have a whole lot of talent, but I think you take Harden off of Houston and they're a 6th seed, maybe a 7. You take Russell Westbrook off of Oklahoma City, and they're sitting somewhere where New Orleans, Sacramento, Dallas, Minnesota are sitting. And that's out of the playoffs. I understand Harden's deal with winning. Yes, they have a better record, 54 games, obviously 47 games for Oklahoma City. But it's about a guy who makes his team better and is valuable, most valuable player. Yes, is he valuable to Houston? Absolutely. I think it's been said by many NBA analysts, the system does help Harden and his success, but he also has a better team than Russell Westbrook. And sorry, my nod goes to Russell. What he's done is phenomenal. You can't diminish that. Not a lot of players are going to be doing that, and especially in this league of hiking up a lot of shots, should be commended for what he's done over the season. So don't miss those games. Like I said, those games between Washington and the Miami Heat. That's going to be a game to watch if you're going to watch that tonight. And also Chicago, Brooklyn Nets is going to play a big part in whether those two teams get in, along with the Indiana Pacers in their game tonight as well. Let's get into some
The NFL.
Yes, indeed. Football is right around the corner. No, not games, but we're going to start getting into more legitimate things about the NFL. OTAs for teams that have gotten new coaches have started this week. Allows them to get a little bit of a head start on evaluating, getting things, establishing, being able to talk to their players and, getting little things done. It's not a whole lot of extras going on here. It's not a lot of field work, not a lot of, they can't do certain things. But Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers getting ready and are in OTAs. Obviously, they're also doing a lot of draft things as well, having meetings for that. You have Anthony Lynn with the Los Angeles Chargers. That's weird to say. Los Angeles Chargers. They are as well going to are in OTAs as well. And Sean McVay of the Los Angeles Rams also in OTAs, along with the Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos, along with Jacksonville. All of those guys got new coaches, and they're getting the process started a little bit early because of that fact. And, hey, in about, 15 days? 14 days, the NFL draft will be here. And it's a lot of, for teams who need defensive players, if your team doesn't get the guy that you think they should get in the first round, I say don't fret. You may say, why? We need the best players on the board. And I'm telling you, this talent pool, I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to be covering and following draft picks, especially on the defensive side of the ball, linebackers, defensive ends, defensive tackles, corners. And when you look at this draft, it is deep on this side of the ball. If you need defensive players, I feel like you can get a solid defensive player that can help your ball club all the way into the 5th round. 6th and 7th round, I still think you can get a player that may not be a day one starter, but he can be a guy that if you need depth, he can do that. Or if you want to develop him and let him be on the practice squad as a future player to maybe come in and fill in as depth or be a starter for you, that they are available. I really hope, and I know that's not the case here because it is the league of quarterbacks, and we've seen those runs of having quarterbacks that are day one starters. And I've said this many times on this show. I'm a firm believer that last year was the beginning of the end of that day one starter quarterback. Those days are over. It's the league will go back to, we thought that the running back was going to be abandoned, and that it was going to be a passing league. Fullback position was starting to become, almost obsolete because the way that offenses are going. But those quarterbacks don't exist. When you look at this draft, yes, are there some quarterbacks with high upside? Sure. Quarterbacks that should be drafted in the top 5? Absolutely not. Personally, I think you can find a good quarterback, solid quarterback, in later rounds. 2, maybe even 3. I personally don't think there should be a quarterback that should be drafted in the 1st round, but we know there's always a desperate team that is in dire need of a quarterback. Cleveland Browns, Houston Texans. There's several teams out there that are in need of a quarterback, and there are some teams that are in need of a quarterback for a replacement because their quarterbacks are up in age in their 30s, and they need to start preparing and grooming that next guy to be their knight in shining armor, so to speak, later on in the future to carry the franchise on. But look, Carson Wentz was a surprise to me. Selected where he was, we can argue that all day, but he's justified it. Golf, big mistake by big mistake. Let's just put it that way. Will he ever pan out? We don't know. But he was a guy that was going to sit, should have sat. Would someone else have picked him? Maybe. But to have auctioned off the amount of picks that were auctioned off in a Redskin-like fashion of a trade, old Redskin-like fashion of a trade, when worse than the RG3 trade, that was terrible. And this year, again, some solid guys, but nothing to write home to mama about, in my opinion, when it comes down to the draft. But like I said, defensive, this is going to be an amazing draft for defenses, and I think you're going to see a lot of players and a lot of teams find depth or starters at this position in the draft, because I tell you, defense is just full of talent, and don't miss it. Starts April 27th, and like I said, 15 days away, 1st round, April 27th, and we'll talk more about the draft as the weeks go on. Now it's time for my final shot. So if you were under a rock, maybe you didn't pay attention to the news, Or if you're a Washington Redskins fan, you probably already know. So linebacker Junior Galette was arrested last Friday at the Black Beach Weekend in Biloxi, Mississippi. He was subdued with a stun gun after running from police. Yeah, not good already. So the lieutenant here says they were flagged down by staff. We're told that there were two guys in a disagreement, and officers went over there, and one guy complied and one guy decided to run, and that was Junior Galette. He was tased, and they said that it was Galette, so can't say it wasn't him. Now, he was arrested for disorderly conduct, failure to comply with officers, and they said he was very cooperative. And you think after you get tased that'll make anybody cooperate, but whatever. He was released on $500 bond. Look, for Junior Galette, a guy who hasn't seen the field in 2 years due to two back-to-back Achilles injuries that have kept him out for the season. He hasn't played any football, hasn't even touched the field in any kind of game fashion since the New Orleans Saints. You'd think you'd be a little bit more careful, being that you've been on 1-year contracts for $800,000. And on top of that, they signed Zach Brown as a free agent. Think you'd be on your best behavior. No, not you. This type of stuff not only can get you suspended for 2 games, which this team doesn't want to have to deal with, but it can also get you fired. Now that remains to be seen, and we don't know this, but it's not a good look for you, and it's not a good look for any player. You must understand the position that you're in as a NFL player, or any type of star of any sort, and have to make sure you keep yourself out of positions that can cost you your livelihood, because this may be your last shot. And the Redskins have dealt with enough turmoil in the offseason. Don't think they want to continue to put up with more bad publicity that they have to answer questions for. It's unfortunate. Happens every year. It's always something. But players have to be smarter than the average bear. As always, we thank you so much for listening to the show. If you listen live, we appreciate it. And if you want to hear a topic, something that you feel passionate about, get at me on Twitter at NotBland21, or shoot us an email at straightshootingst@gmail.com. We'll be happy to answer that. And if it's good enough topic, we've had topics here on the show, and I love talking shop with you guys, whether it's online or expressing it here on the show. You can check out my work at USA Today. That is the Redskins Wire .usatoday.com. Also at sportsjourney.com. Check out the entire crew there at The Wire. Great stuff for Redskins fans. Know you love your Redskins there, DMV and throughout the world. It's a great site, great people. I'm not saying that just because I work there. The content is amazing. Keep you abreast of what's going on with the Redskins. Again, we thank you. And this has been Straight Shooting Sports Talk.